Now available for pre-order on Kindle. Stop Simping in Cyberspace. Learn how to avoid predatory females in their virtual con games with Stop Simping in Cyberspace. Pre-order your copy of Stop Simping in Cyberspace on Kindle today. I have been hesitant to speak on the case of Gabby Petito, the Long Island woman who was found dead in Wyoming. And the reason why I have been hesitant to speak on the homicide of Gabby Petito is because the alleged prime suspect, Brian Landrie, has not been found, and we really do not have a clear motive for murder, if there was one. And because we live in the United States and a citizen of the United States is innocent until proven guilty, I wanted to hold off on making any videos about this case until more facts rolled in. Now, as it stands right now, your Brian Landrie is on the run, and there's a federal warrant for his arrest as related to the credit cards and debit cards of Gabby Petito. Now, a couple of months ago, your Gabby Petito and Brian Landrie, alleged high school sweethearts, decided to go on a trip across country. And they were going across country in this converted 2012 Ford Transit van, living outside of the back of the van. Now, most people would see this as just some couple traveling, but when I took a critical examination of this whole situation between your Gabby Petito and Brian Landrie, it could possibly be the start of a serious incident, like I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis, because when you have a beta male inside of a vehicle with his girlfriend over an extended period of time traveling, that can create a very hostile situation. Now, your beta males, primarily, they get really insecure when they are in a relationship with a woman, and that insecurity winds up escalating when you consider the lifestyle that Gabby Petito was living. Now, your Gabby Petito was trying to build up a following on social media, and she was looking to use this cross-country trip as a way to try to continue building up her following online. And when you have a guy who's a beta male and he's involved with a female with a very strong social media presence, that's a recipe for disaster. And the reason why it's a recipe for disaster is because this woman is getting attention from people online. She's getting lots of likes. She's getting a lot of comments from all sorts of guys. And when you have your beta male, he's not really confident in himself. And because he's not confident in himself, he starts to get upset about the attention his woman is receiving online from all of those people. And he also starts to get insecure about the status of his relationship because he's starting to see all these guys online dropping all sorts of thirsty comments, and he's seeing his woman going out here and responding to those comments online. Now, it is reported that your Gabby Petito and your Brian Landrie were having lots of arguments during their trip, and if the facts fit within the pattern of a beta male, I believe that your Brian Landrie was probably arguing with your Gabby Petito primarily about all of the attention she was getting online, because he was getting frustrated that he was not the center of that attention. Now, your beta males do not really like it when their girlfriends are getting all the attention from other people, because your beta males usually see females as an attachment for them to get attention. And this is probably what led to your Brian Landrie allegedly winding up simmering and boiling in a lot of anger, seeing his girlfriend of all these years getting all of this attention from guys online as they were traveling across the country. And as he saw his girlfriend traveling across the country, taking all of these pictures, getting all of these likes, and making all of these different videos and stuff, and getting more and more attention, this was making this man's blood boil under the surface, and he probably just could not hold it in for much longer. Now, again, over the course of this trip, their witnesses said that they saw numerous arguments, and in one of those arguments, the police were called. And the police, after being called as related to the domestic violence, decided that the couple should separate for a while, and then the couple, after separating for a minute, then decided to get back together and get back on the road. And after they got back on the road, what happened was that your Brian Landrie came back to where he was at home and came back without Gabby Petito. And him coming back without Gabby Petito is what led many to speculate that there may have possibly been some foul play. Now, your Brian Landrie, after coming back, then decided to disappear for some strange reason, and that has a lot of people thinking that there was something suspect about his behavior, because when it came down to this woman disappearing, and he was, and this is supposed to be his high school sweetheart, you would think that he would have gone out here and been a lot more concerned about your Gabby Petito if this was his high school sweetheart. Now, when it comes down to these kind of relationships, they oftentimes deteriorate over time, and sometimes your beta males are oblivious to how the relationship has deteriorated. And that's another factor that I believe is related to the relationship between Gabby Petito and Brian Landrie. Here was a girl who had grown up in high school, and this guy was her center of attention. But as she grew older, she started to grow apart from this man. And this was another thing that upsets a lot of beta males, is that they don't understand that people grow and change, and who you knew back in high school is not who a person will be later on. And a lot of these guys, because they want to live in a smooth world and want to be comfortable in a smooth world, they cannot deal with the fact that a person's life changes, a person's viewpoints change. And this was probably one of the things that upset your Brian Landrie over the course of this cross-country trip, realizing that Gabby Petito had changed as a person, and she was starting to grow out of the girl he knew and starting to grow into a completely different woman. And this is probably one of the things that angered him so much, was seeing that the girl he grew up with was changing into a different woman. And over the course of this trip, inside of those cramped quarters, this is probably, again, another thing that wound up frustrating him over the course of this trip, is seeing the girl he grew up with changing into another woman, a woman who was getting the attention of guys online and being seen in a whole different light. So these are the reasons I believe that led to the relationship deteriorating between Gabby Petito and Brian Landrie. But when I take a critical examination of his actions after he came back, they clearly, in some ways, fit the pattern and profile I see regarding beta males in my book, The Man Crisis, because oftentimes when your beta males have an issue with a female, they will leave her all by themselves, just like in the case of Angela Tremonti, who tragically wound up dying on a mountaintop in Arizona when that police officer could not get his way with Angela Tremonti and could not get the relationship to go the way he wanted. He, as I see it, abandoned her on that mountaintop and left her to die because he knew passively that she had traveled all the way from Massachusetts all the way to see him in Arizona and did not know anything about mountain climbing or what she would need in the hot Arizona desert, and aggressively abandoned her to leave her to her death. And I believe the same thing possibly happened here with your Brian Landrie. Passively, he saw that your Gabby Petito had been changing into a different woman over the course of this trip, and as he was simmering and boiling in anger and becoming more frustrated with her, aggressively he decided to leave her out in Wyoming where she was found dead. Because when a beta male cannot have the relationship he wants with a woman, that's when he starts to express his anger and contempt for that woman. And he doesn't do it directly by going face to face with that woman and saying something like, oh, this relationship isn't working out, so we're just going to break up and then let her go her way and you go your way. No, he goes out and does passive aggressive things and then leaves this woman to suffer as a result because he's angry that she's not the woman he thought she was. And that's what I believe happened here with your Gabby Petito and your Brian Landrie. Now, your Brian Landrie has disappeared over the course of the last couple of days, and it looks like it possibly could be a tragic case if he is not found. And when I look at that part of the case, it definitely looks like the behavior of a beta male, because again, when a beta male can't have the woman he wants and believes his life is destroyed, what he wants to do is destroy her life and then destroy his, because his world has been completely destroyed. Now, again, we don't know where Brian Landrie is, so I cannot draw to that conclusion just yet, but based on what I'm seeing, that's what it's looking like to me. And when I look at Brian Landrie, based on the details as far as they are right now, they're looking closer and closer to fitting the pattern and profile I talk about regarding beta males in my book, The Man Crisis. And it remains to be seen if your Brian Landrie will be found dead or alive. But if he is found alive and tried for this alleged murder and they have the evidence, it's looking like he practically destroyed his life based on his feelings about a woman, and he'll have close to the rest of his life to have to deal with those feelings inside of a penitentiary as Bubba and Tiny trade him for Little Debbie snack cakes, Fritos chips, and your ramen noodles. That's if they catch him and if they can prove that he did this. But still, everything is in the air as related to this case, but the details again are very clear to me as related to what possibly could have went on. And again, this is another tragic case of a beta male who got a girlfriend but just did not understand that people change, people grow into different people, and when you're in something like a close quarters, like a van for going across the country, that's when you start to see who a person really is. And that's something that upsets a lot of beta males, is seeing who a woman really is, and they can't handle that the fantasy that he had about this woman does not match the reality of who she is. And this is one of the things that triggers a lot of anger in a lot of beta males, and it can lead to a very perilous situation for a woman like a Gabby Petito. And that is why your beta males are extremely dangerous individuals to deal with, because a lot of these guys cannot understand the fact that a woman is not what you think she is in a lot of cases, and a lot of times you don't really get to know a woman until you have to spend an extended period of time with her. So this is what it looks like to me, that he was on this cross-country trip thinking he would get closer to this woman, but as the fantasies he had about this woman over the years started to turn into reality, he got to know the real her. He started to simmer and boil in anger about all the attention she was receiving, and he eventually wound up exploding in a rage where he left this woman, and we don't know what happened in between. And the only person who does know what happened in between is your Brian Landrie, but he's on the run with a federal warrant. So this is, again, I can't say that everything is is there, but when I look at the details, it is falling into the pattern and profile I talked about regarding beta males in the man crisis. And your Brian Landrie currently is a man in crisis because he's on the run from federal agents, and if they find him and catch him, he may be winding up doing some time with Bubba and Tiny, and he may be used for commissary inside of a federal prison. Now, if you want to learn more about the extremely dysfunctional behavior of beta males, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis on Smashwords, the iBook store, and Google Play. And this book details many of the extremely dysfunctional behaviors of beta males and what leads to them participating in a spectrum of extremely violent behaviors like alleged here. And if you want to see me make more men's issues videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available for the first time on Google Play, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are falling apart in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy on Google Play today.